Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Jazz Museum in Harlem. My name is Loren Schoenberg. I'm the executive director of the Jazz Museum in Harlem, but most glaringly, I'm not wearing a sport jacket. And I don't want you to misinterpret that in any way. As you know, we always transfer what we do here, and due to circumstances beyond my control, I'm sport jacketless tonight, and I apologize about that because tonight is because tonight we have not only the leader of one of the great bands of the world, but also a gentleman who just has been, frankly, around playing Count Basie's band and other bands for over 50 years. We're just honored to death to have him here tonight. On behalf of my co-director, Christian McBride, and my board of directors, and everyone else, I'd like to introduce the other, besides myself, is the full-time staff, and that's Miss Wilhelmina Grant, who you all know is right there. And once again, just to invite you to our many programs, our Tuesday night classes, Jazz for Curious Listeners, and our Thursday evening series here. By the way, this is the last Harlem Speaks that will be held in this office, with one exception. Starting next Thursday, 2 weeks from tonight, we're moving to the Museum of the City of New York for these events, but don't worry, we're not going to lose the intimate flavor. We're going to do them just like we do them here. But for us, for Wilhelmina and I, with the office, frankly, it's hard to break up and break down a large space with all of our things out and have people come in all the time. But we will still do some things here on occasion. On the alternate Thursday, of course, we have our Harlem Swing series. We had Benny Powell, an old friend of Mr. Hughes's, play for our series not long ago. And Friday nights, we're down at the Rubin Museum of Art. So we're all over the place. On the Saturdays, we're in the public schools. But tonight is the big night. I'd like to introduce my co-producer of the Harlem Speak series and someone who has come up with more great ideas. And recently, hopefully you've been hearing him on the radio. He's much too modest to mention it himself. He's been doing some wonderful programming on WBAI FM, 99.5, some wonderful jazz shows. I'm not just saying that because he had me as a guest, but he's been doing some really wonderful things. I'm very honored to introduce your host for this evening, Mr. Greg Thomas.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome once again to everyone. And welcome to Mr. Bill Hughes, who's our special guest. Please come up. Yes. Okay. Make sure your mic is to your liking.
Yeah, you're the same Greg I've known for years.
Yes, sir.
So I'm okay.
All right. I'm okay too. We finally got you here. With all that traveling.
Took you 50 years, and you finally. That's older than you are, isn't it?
50? That's a little older than me. Not too far behind.
Okay.
Not too far behind. But with all the traveling of the Basie band that you're now head of and leading, it's been difficult to get you here, but we are very proud to have you here. And let's start going back just a couple of years to your beginnings.
Okay.
Tell us where you were born.
Okay, I was born in Dallas, Texas.
In Dallas, Texas.
That's right.
Okay.
March 28, 1930.
March 28, 1930. My
So everybody
that
knows.
deserves a hand.
Everybody knows I'm an old horse now, right? Yeah,
Okay.
I've been around for a good long while.
Mm-hmm.
Long before I even met Basie.
Okay, yes, absolutely. Now, tell us about your parents.
Well, my parents were poor people during the time, that I was born.
You were born in the midst of the Depression.
Yes, right on the middle of the Depression, and we suffered some very, very hard times down there. And my father eventually got a job that moved him to Washington, D.C., working for the Bureau of Engraving, making the money.
Okay.
And that happened around 1939, I think, or 40, right in there.
Okay.
And we all moved to Washington, D.C. And actually, that's where everything that was going to happen to me started to happen in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And that was the original.
So you were about 10 years old when you moved to Washington. Okay. Brothers and sisters?
I have two brothers.
Okay.
One passed.
All right. And where were you in the
In the middle.
In the middle.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And you said things really got started in Washington. So what do you mean by that? Tell us exactly what started to happen
Well,
for you.
somewhere down the line, my father decided he wanted to play the trombone.
This is after you moved to Washington?
This is after we moved to Washington.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was already in junior high school, I think, when he started. And he picked up the trombone and he started to, find out how to play scales and all that on it. And he eventually joined the Benevolent Protective Order of Elks band. And it was primarily a marching band. And I used to go to rehearsals with him. And I liked the sound of the horn. I really liked the sound. And I asked him if I could play trombone. And he said, we only have one trombone, son, and I'm playing it.
Okay.
So I said, okay. And I remember asking the guy who was in charge of the orchestra at my junior high school if I could play trombone. He said, well, we don't have a trombone, but we have a violin you can have. I said, okay, I'll play violin. One day on the violin, that was it for me.
Okay.
I was finished with the violin.
Uh-huh.
And I continued on the trombone after that, just working around it.
Wait a second, though, but you still haven't got the trombone in your hands from what we heard. Because your dad said there's one trombone.
Yeah.
You didn't get it in school.
Well, I eventually scuffled up on a trombone.
Okay, tell us about that. How'd you
Well, I had a friend who had a beat-up trombone at his house, and he asked me if I wanted to play that trombone. And I said, man, I'll take any trombone I can get, So I started playing around with that one. And eventually, it seemed like it happened overnight to me.
were you
I
12,
was-
13 by this
I
time?
was right in that area.
Okay.
It seemed like it happened overnight to me, but I think it was maybe 16 or 17 before I felt comfortable enough to invade some sessions, some very good sessions that were going on around Washington, D.C. at that time. There was a club in Washington located at 7th and T Streets. And I think it was called the 7T Club, if I remember correctly. And they used to have some gigantic sessions in there. Charlie Rouse and what's the other tenor saxophone player? I can't think of his name. But there were some great names playing in there. And I used to go in there and listen to those guys. And I eventually got up enough nerve to get up on the bandstand.
Okay.
And fumbled my way through a few things,
All right. Now, let's not skip over the real formative years. Did your dad teach you some things about the rudiments?
Oh, yeah.
Did you took lessons?
Definitely.
Tell us about
Most definitely.
the early stage.
Well, I used to go to the rehearsals for one thing, and I'd sit right up under him, and he'd play some passages or something, and I would say, how'd you do that? Or, what was that you just played? I just got little bits and pieces of stuff from him as we went along. And I guess I developed a sort of a style from, just doing that. And then when I got into the session thing, that really helped me to form, exactly what I wanted to do with the trombone.
All right. Now, the sessions are one thing. That's live, and that's, the on bandstand.
Yeah.
University, you could say. In a sense.
Yeah.
But were there books that you studied out of?
Well, at the same time, I was playing with the high school band. See?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of music were you all playing?
Marches.
Okay.
There were marches and an occasional concert style piece, that the band could handle. It wasn't a very good band
Okay.
because the guys didn't really apply themselves, And I guess I was so avid, the guy who was in charge of it said, "You are the captain of the band from now on, so you see that these guys are here on time and, have done their scales and whatever they're supposed to do before they come back here."
Right.
So, I took that on. never thinking career.
Okay.
Music.
Okay, you anticipated that next question.
Mhm.
So you were just enjoying yourself.
I was just enjoying myself.
Okay. So you just loved it and started doing these sessions about the age of 16, 17.
Yeah.
I was kind of trying to come up with some other name. You mentioned Charlie Rouse.
Yeah, Charlie Rouse. So, wait a minute. I'll fix that.
Okay.
I can't remember everybody's name anymore, so
You wrote some
let's
stuff
see
down.
what I got here.
That'll work. All right.
Let's see. Let me see. It says here that I was playing with people like Frank West, Jimmy Cobb, Buck Hill, Sylvester Venable, George Botts, Bertel Knox, John Payne, a guy named Lil Diz. There was a Charlie Butler, who was a very good trombone player, and Rick Henderson. That was just a few of the guys that I'd run into. They were masterful, you know. Oh, Benny. I'm still trying to think of the tenor saxophone player.
You play with any?
That's all right. It'll come to me.
Okay.
It'll come to me.
All right. Golson?
Benny Golson.
Benny Golson.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
We had a band. Well, this is later on now. I hate to move on without you saying move on.
No, go right ahead.
But we moved on to Howard University,
Uh-huh.
where I studied pharmacy.
Okay.
Because I thought I was going to be a pharmacist,
Okay.
you know. And by that time, I was playing a lot of sessions around Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And I was an add-on musician for a few well-known people who came into Washington.
Okay.
And
For example.
that's just, I'll tell you, that's the hard part for me. I can't remember the guys' names anymore. I don't even have his name on here.
When you say you were
It'll
an
come
add,
to me.
when you say you were an add-on, what does that mean?
Oh, somebody would come in town and they would need
A bone player.
yeah, an extra horn,
Extra horn.
and a rhythm section probably.
Okay.
And I was the extra horn a lot.
Okay.
So I was enjoying doing that because I was working with some giants, man.
Hey. Were there any trombonists? Start with trombone and go to
Mhm.
instrument that really knocked you out to the extent that you modeled or patterned yourself.
All I have to say is JJ.
JJ.
JJ was my hero
Okay.
until he, left this earth. I
Okay.
always thought he was the man on the trombone.
Okay. And by I guess 16, 17, that would be like 46, 47. He was on the scene.
Yeah,
Wasn't he, by then?
yeah, he was definitely on the scene. He was ruling the scene to me,
Okay. Well, tell us about the first time that you remember seeing J.J. Johnson perform live.
The first time I saw him perform live, he was with a guy named Illinois Jaquette. You remember Illinois? And I was somewhat aware of JJ at that time, but I wasn't, like that hipped on him that I knew exactly what he was doing. And he came in and he just rode over everything that night for me. And from that point on, I was locked in. Every time I saw him, I was bowing.
Yeah.
And
Were you all friends?
we got to be kind of sort of friends because JJ wasn't a very, like, we're going to be friends type of guy,
Okay.
But he eventually grew friendly enough for me to give me a trombone case and a cover with his name inside, which I still have, of course.
Okay.
And that's one of my greatest mementos from, his reign over the trombone.
When was that approximately that he gave you that?
This was after I joined Basie,
Okay.
because I got to know him better. After I joined Basie, I got to talk to him,
Right.
And we finally got friendly enough. He says, "Hey man, I got an extra trombone case. You need a trombone case?" I didn't need a trombone case, but I said, "Yeah."
Okay.
So he autographed it for me on the inside of the case.
Right.
And like I said, that's one of my prime mementos now.
Okay. We're gonna get up to the basic period, but I did want you to say something about your mom. Did your mom have any type of musical background?
As far as I can remember, no.
Okay.
She never, I mean, she sang sometime around the house,
Right.
but she never got involved with any kind of a music group at church or anything like that.
Okay.
So I'd have to say no as far as, you know, her sensibility to music. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned church. Did you all attend church
Oh,
regularly?
definitely.
Which denomination?
Baptist.
Baptist.
Mhm.
Okay. Would you say that had an influence on your musical sensibility?
I would suppose that, you know, the singing that went on in a Baptist church filters into your head so that it has an impression on you, you know. You can't walk away from there and not have something like stay with you when you pick up an instrument and play it.
Right.
So yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's a yes.
Okay.
It's a definite yes.
All right. All right. Howard University, studying pharmacy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how did that go? And when the transition must have taken place. So
Yeah, well,
when and how?
it went fairly well until I met my wife, who's supposed to be here,
Okay.
and I still don't see her.
Okay.
And I sired a child, you know, and we were expecting this child, and
This is at Howard. Oh,
this is
while
what
you're
I
at
was,
Howard.
yeah.
Okay.
So I had to do something about supporting this child and this wife.
Okay.
I married the wife,
Okay.
of course,
Right. Right.
and the child was still coming.
Okay.
So I said, well, I'll drop out for a year and I'll get a job. And I got a job at the National Health Institute in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And I worked for a very nice guy by the name of Dr. Pratt. And he was also musically inclined. He would have the staff in the lab every day sight sing some tunes out of it. That helped me a lot, sight singing those tunes.
Okay.
That helped me quite a bit.
Huh.
And
You would have the folks in the lab. This is the National Health Institute.
yeah,
And he would have them sightseeing.
we'd take a break every now and then and we'd get out these little books and we'd sightsee.
That's really interesting.
And he found out that, you know, that I played trombone, although he knew I was trying to be a pharmacist.
Right.
So he was very much on my side, and he was saying that if I wanted to, he would let me work there for about a year, and then he would get some financial help for me so I could finish my pharmacy course.
Okay.
You know, so I thought that was very nice, and I intended to go along with that until I got the telephone call. We won't talk about the telephone call yet, right?
No.
Okay, we won't talk about it.
Well, actually, that's not right. That's not right to the audience. Okay, tell us about the telephone call.
Well, the telephone call was kind of basic.
Oh.
Yeah, kind of basic was calling, you know. Now, let me mention that by the time he called me, there were 3 guys in the band who I knew very well.
All right.
One was Benny Powell. The other was Frank West, who I played with a lot. And the other was Eddie Jones, the bass player,
Okay.
who was here. And I think Frank West was the one who recommended me to Basie.
Okay.
So Basie called me, and you know, and we were talking on the phone. He says, "Yeah, you Bill Hughes, the trombone player?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, I'm Count Basie." And I said, "Sure." And he went on for a few minutes. He said, "Yeah, some of the guys in the band tell me you play trombone pretty good, and I wondered if you wanted to come up here and sit in with the band a couple of days. Let's see how it goes." And I said, "Okay, all right, Mr. Basie." And I hung up.
Now, this was
And I
he
think-
called you at home.
He called me at home.
Okay.
And You know, I thought it was somebody joking with him, and I actually did, you know. I really didn't think it was him.
Okay.
I even told my wife, I said, some joker just called me telling me it's Count Basie, you know. And I guess about a half hour later, he called back. He said, well, you hung up kind of quick. He said, are you deciding on whether you're going to come up or what? And I almost dropped the phone because then I realized that the guy was for real, you know. So I said, yeah, I think I'll be able to come up and play, you know. I'll try. I was shaking from the very first.
Hey, what year was this?
That was 1953.
1953. Okay, so you were 23 years old.
Yeah.
All right. And left Howard to work at the National Health Institute to begin supporting family. Okay. Before you mentioned the call, this question came to mind. How did you get that job at the National Health Institutes? This is 1953. This is still during the time of segregation. Now you're in Washington, and you are at Howard University. So I'm wondering if was it?
Yeah, evidently things had opened up a little bit there.
Okay.
I don't know. There were some applications out there for jobs within those labs, you know.
Okay.
That I got in on. I don't know whether it came through. I can't remember whether it came through Howard or from some other source, you know.
And Dr. Pratt.
Pratt.
Okay. What was his background? Ethnic, racial?
Oh, he was white.
White guy.
White
Okay.
person.
All right. Did you stay in touch with him?
Not as much as I should have.
Okay. I bet he was.
Every now and then I would talk to him.
He was proud of you, I know.
He was.
Okay.
You know, but he'd always say, anytime you want to come back.
Okay. Now, before we go into the Basie of your years, I'd like to go back to the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
The group they call the Old Testament Band. And you would be you'd be very young at this time, but...
Well, let me tell you another story about that.
Okay.
The Old Testament Band.
Yes, sir.
My father, you know, used to go to those Elks parades. And there was one in this town, I think in about what would that have been? Probably about 1949 or 50, somewhere. It might, no, it was earlier than that. 48, 47.
In Washington.
In Washington. I was living in Washington.
Right. Yep.
The parade was in New York. And we came to New York, and I remember we checked in right up the street. There was a hotel. Let me see, what was the name of that hotel?
Teresa Hotel?
No, it wasn't the Teresa. It wasn't that grand. Wasn't the Woodside. I stayed in the Woodside a few times. Cecil. Give that man an A. Yes. It was a Cecil Hotel.
Okay.
And I remember that because it was kind of beat up, you know.
All right.
But anyhow, he said, come on, son, I'm going to take you down and hear some real music. And Basie was playing at the Roxy Theater downtown. And we went down, and that's the first time I'd heard Basie, you know, on the stage level. I'd heard plenty of music on record.
Yeah, sure.
But, man, the band was swinging like, I said, oh, boy, if I could do that. And that was one of the highlights of my life, too, is because way after I joined the band, I would always think about that first time that I heard Basie. And then I would appreciate the fact that I was lucky enough to have been able to join, you know, that kind of a situation.
Blessed. I'd like us to welcome and give a hand to Mrs. Hughes, who just arrived.
I'm her boss.
You say that now. All right. And as Mr. Hughes mentioned in the beginning, I happen to have known him for a number of years.
Yeah.
Because we're going to get to the point where we talk about the Staten Island connection, which I have, and that's how I know them. But back to you, of course. Okay. Can you tell us in a little more detail what that experience was like you first heard Basie? What you heard it on record and on the radio? What was it? Were there particular songs, soloists, or just the overall experience?
I think the overall experience was the main thing. But of course, then I zeroed in on the trombone players too, you know.
All right.
And
Tell us about that.
well, I mean, I didn't know the trombone players' names at that particular time. But when they stood up and did their choruses, you know, I was, that's what you have to be able to do.
So that's how it's supposed to go.
Yeah, that's the way it's supposed to go. And all that stuff really impressed me, man. And that rhythm section, man, that I can't even explain what I was feeling when I was sitting out there. When we got ready to go, I said, "Can we stay for another show, Dad?" He said, "No, we gotta get away."
Okay.
I was downhearted, you know, like the rest of the day.
So within 5-6 years,
Yeah,
you ended up playing in the band.
that's right.
Okay. So now can we go back to the Old Testament?
Yeah, sure. You
Okay.
can. We can go back to Old Testament.
All right. Now, so when we say the Old Testament, of course, we're talking about the
band.
The band in the 30s.
The band.
The band.
Yeah, those are guys that established the whole thing.
Right.
Coming out of Kansas City with all that fire and thunder, man, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody's listening to what is this new thing that this guys got. And one of the main things was the rhythm section
All right.
with Basie,
Mm-hmm.
Freddie Green, who joined a little bit later in New York.
Okay.
Freddie Green and Joe Jones
Joe Jones.
and Jimmy Page. What's his name? Jimmy
Walter Page.
Walter Page.
Uh-huh. Page.
And man, they were just setting up a racket and a swing back. If you couldn't swing at all, you were going to swing when they were playing behind you. You know, that's just how hot it was.
Okay.
And I had never been to Kansas City, you know, so I didn't know what that must have been like around there, but it must have been something terrific really going on, you know. And from the legacy of the music that they left behind, it shows that there were a lot of things going on at that point in time that was changing the whole face of music. With Papa Joe Jones, it was like coming up off the dunk, 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 dunk with the bass drum to you know, that changed the whole feeling of the thing. You know, it wasn't like that marching straight ahead with the bass drum going 4/4 all the time, you know.
Would you say it lightened it?
Yeah, it
Opened
put
it
the,
up?
yeah, it like made the sound a little more airy.
Okay.
You know, there was a little more space for music tones to be in there instead of like the marching thing, you know.
Okay.
So I think that was one of the main impacts of the band, all those bands coming out of at that particular time, but the Basie band more so than anybody else.
All right. And of course, we do need to thank John Hammond
Oh,
for
definitely.
his role.
Definitely. He's the one that got him out of there financially. You know, he's the one that took on that load. They never would have been able to get out of there without some benefactor like that taking care of it.
All right. Then of course, they were on radio quite a bit, and that
Yeah.
that
Oh,
brought
yeah.
their popularity.
Well, I understand that's how Bass got his name, you know. I don't know whether it's true. Somebody said, well, we all already have an Earl of Hines and a Duke of Ellington. Now we have a Count of Basie,
Okay.
and it stuck. Now, I don't know whether it's true or
But
not.
it sure sounds good. Sounds like a good story.
Yeah.
So let me name some specific people in that Old Testament band. I want you to tell us your interactions with them, your thoughts of them as a player and as a person. Lester Young.
Lester Young, he was an individual of the highest quality. Lester stayed pretty much to himself. And I didn't get a chance to hang with Lester until after I joined this band, and we were playing the Birdland Club, the original Birdland Club.
Okay.
You don't know anything about that,
I
right?
sure what did. I read about it. But
Right down at 52nd and Broadway.
okay.
There was Club Birdland, and we played in there a lot when I first joined the band.
Okay.
Because actually the one-nighter jobs weren't doing all that swell for Basie at that point. He was just reforming, actually.
Is that after he
After he broke up the other
and
band,
had a small group?
had a small group,
Okay.
and then he reformed. I guess everybody in here probably heard, no, some of you too young, but he had a great small group with Clark Terry and Buddy DeFranco was in there.
Clarinet.
What's the drummer's name? Gus Johnson.
Okay.
Freddie Green rammed his way back in because he'd fired Freddie. And Freddie went down to wherever they were playing and said, "Y'all not leaving me in." And Freddie was there the rest of his life. I think Freddie and I are the only members, and actually I wasn't there 50 years with Basie, but we're the only ones who stayed at least 50 years with this band.
Well, we gotta give him a hand on that. 50
It's a long time, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Especially if you're only 49.
It's Smith, lady. All right. Okay, how about Benny Morton?
Benny Moten.
Benny Morton.
Yeah, well, Benny was I think he was the seed behind Basie's formation, because Basie played in that band for a good while. And when Benny died, which I think it seems like it happened rather suddenly that Benny died, the guys decided they wanted Basie to be the leader. And I take it from that particular crossover that they were already playing, you know, pretty much like Basie wanted it to go.
Okay.
And he stayed with that when they came out of there. And like you said, John Hammond heard this man on the radio and decided this was the band to be out there playing jazz music. And he was right, of course. I mean, there were a lot of good bands back at that time, but they were playing a different thing altogether.
Okay.
Basie.
Dickie Wells.
Dickie Wells, one of my heroes. I met him too, hung out with him. Dick Dickinson, Dickie Wells, what's that? But when you get to be 49, you know, you can't remember as fast. Who you call?
She said it's hard to remember. Do you think you have it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
No, I don't think I wrote it down.
Okay. But,
Yes.
tell us some things about them. I mean, your interactions with them, their personality.
You know, I without question,
playing style.
yeah, without question, all of these guys were open to young guys talking to them about. And when I say young guys, because they weren't really all that much older than me, but they were open to talking about, you know, how they got to play their styles and, you know, what they thought would help for me or anybody else to develop what they were doing. And we got some pretty good information.
Can you give us one example of something that Dick Dickinson or Dickie Wells might have shared?
Well, Vic, he would always, like if we were on the same scene together, and it seemed like we would run into each other at these jazz festivals, and we would just hang out, drinking in a room, you know, and talking about trombone and music and anything else that happened to come up, you know. And he gave me some of his information on how he approached his mouthpiece, you know, how he got his buzz going, which I don't know whether anybody understands that in here, but it, you know,
There's a certain
a certain way of finding what mouthpiece, you know, fits best,
okay.
and how you going to buzz into this mouthpiece. And a lot of what he recommended was like buzzing every day. You know, you don't just play the trombone, you buzz into your
You blow
mouthpiece.
into the mouthpiece.
Just the mouthpiece.
So like I know on a trumpet is like
That's it. Just the mouthpiece, and try to play tunes with just the mouthpiece. You know, and that facilitates your being able to play those tunes with the rest of the horn on. In fact, it makes it easier if you get it so that you can play a tune on the mouthpiece without the horn. You know,
I think of Clark Terry.
genius. He's a genius.
Okay, now what about Papa Joe? Papa Joe Jones. You mentioned
Papa
him
Joe
before.
Jones.
Tell us about.
He was an individual to love, who completely devoted to the style of Count Basie style that he helped establish.
Okay.
And I got a chance to play with him in this band because anytime he was around, Basie would call him up to play, you know.
Okay.
And he didn't seem like he lost anything in the way of playing. That, you know, he was still doing what he was doing. And you could feel the change, even though we had, we had some good drummers. Sonny Payne was a very good drummer, by the way. And we loved those drummers, but Papa Joe had his own thing going that if you sat there and you played it, you're going to eventually be playing the way Papa Joe wanted you to play, you know. That's how,
Strong.
yeah, how strong he was.
His groove and his rhythm.
Influencing, yeah.
Okay, his pulse.
Yeah.
Okay. And Jimmy Rushing.
Jimmy Rushing. I didn't get to know him very well, but the one time we went on a trip to England, and Jimmy and Sarah Vaughan were on the trip, and I remember listening to a lot of stories on the bus from Jimmy.
Okay.
Some that can be told and some that can't be told.
Okay. All right.
And he was a funny guy
Mm-hmm.
and a great singer.
All
You know.
right. Okay. Some Oklahoma rhythm.
I think so.
Right.
Mm.
Matter of fact, let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, Ellington was known for having people from like all different parts
Oh,
of the
before
country.
before we go to Ellington,
Uh-huh.
let me tell you this.
Okay.
At the same time I was joining Basie, there was another guy by the name of Rick Henderson who had joined the Duke Ellington Orchestra. And he came back from a road trip at about the same time I was dealing with Basie. And he said, Duke asked me about having you come in and seeing if you can join his band. And I
How
said,
long
this
had you been
can't be
with Basie?
happening. Actually, I'm trying to think if I'd already rehearsed with Basie's band.
Okay.
And we played the Savoy Ballroom, by the way, my very first gig.
Oh wow.
And I remember telling him, I don't think I'd fit in that Duke Ellington band, so I'm going to stay with the Count Basie.
Why didn't you think you fit?
I don't know. I had so many individual heroes in that Duke Ellington band who had so many varied styles, I said, I can't get in there and don't have a particular style that's gonna fit that band, So I was in the position of turning down Duke Ellington.
That's a rare.
And I used to lay up and say, "Are you crazy?"
Did you ever get a chance to talk to Duke about
I
that?
never did. I never had the nerve to go up and say anything to Duke the whole time. I used to just look at him from, I never said a word. I think I might have said hello, how you, Mr. Ellington, or something like that.
Okay. And did Basie know that Duke had reached out for you?
I don't think so. If he did, he'd never mentioned it.
Okay.
It may have never gotten past him asking Rick.
Okay.
And Rick. You didn't know Rick Henderson, did you?
No, I didn't.
Excellent player.
Mm.
He's passed now, too.
Okay.
But
Okay.
anyhow, that's what was happening, to me right at that particular time.
Okay.
And then I had this wife and child
Right.
to deal with,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember telling her, I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna go up here and I'll rehearse with the Count Basie for a couple of days, and I know he's gonna fire me, so I'll just be up here for a little while."
You felt that way because you didn't think that you were.
I didn't think I
On that
qualified. No, I didn't think I qualified. I really didn't.
how would you describe your style at the time? I mean, because my knowledge of your playing and your reputation in the Basie band, if I may be so bold to say, is as a great section man, not so much as a soloist.
Well, see, at that particular time, I was being hailed as a soloist.
Ah, okay.
I was being hailed as a soloist, and I was playing a lot of small band stuff, and I was known as a good swinger. I wasn't that technically adept, but I was, the swing of the thing was my thing.
Okay, all right.
And then I joined the Basie band. I think I was really afraid in the Basie band the whole time. I never did have.
So you solos,
just get out there and, make my way through some tunes. Anyway, I didn't take advantage of that.
Okay.
So,
well, let's fast
I
forward.
played. Yeah,
Right. No,
okay.
No, you're good.
Oh, I was going to say, consequently, I had maybe 4 or 5 solos that I played, on a regular basis with Basie.
Okay.
There weren't that many trombone solos in here.
Okay. What were some of those tunes?
Let's see if I can remember now. There was one called. You remember any of the tunes I was playing?
He'll come to you.
I remember I can remember how the tunes went, but I can't remember.
Well, then hum one. Scat one.
There's one thing that what the hell's the name of that? Frank West wrote the tune, and I can't.
I think I know that tune. Yeah, really, I mean,
You too, huh?
yeah, but the name of it. Oh man, yeah, that's a good one. Help, Loren, help. You know that's the name of that tune? Oh, okay, all right, okay, all right. Well, anyway, of course, one person, I'd be remiss if I didn't say Billie Holiday.
Yeah, Billie Holiday.
So
I remember her cussing us out thoroughly on stage.
okay. Tell us about that.
I can only tell you about it. I can't repeat what she was saying.
That's all right.
Well, my first run-in with her, I was playing with a band in Washington, D.C. There was a guy named Wesley Anderson who had a very good septet. And when Billie came through town, we were the band that was going to be backing her. And we got along fairly well. But somewhere along the way, she got, upset about something. And stuff started to spill out of her mouth. And I can't just let it spill in here with all these ladies. But she was, she was a piece of work. And then I remember we did a thing at Carnegie Hall. That was after I joined Basie. And she did us the same way then. I said, oh, well, I guess that's the way she does business.
During rehearsal?
During rehearsal.
Right.
Yeah, not during the
Right.
performance.
Okay.
Yeah, during the performance, she was very ladylike. And when you sit back and you listen to the singing, and you could do no wrong,
Okay. Right. Okay. Now, let's talk about the band that you were in. And some of your bandmates. Let's start with the trombone section.
Okay. At that point in time, it was me and Henry Coker and Benny Powell.
Okay.
2 very strong players.
All right.
And Henry Coker was the not appointed lead trombone player, but he was the one who played most of the lead parts.
Okay.
Although we all had duties to play, like a lead part. If it came your way, it fell in front of you, then you had to play it. And we all shared it in that way. But I think not Benny, but Henry was very under-recognized for what he did in this band. I very rarely hear anybody mention his name. You say Henry Coker and they'll say, who? You know? And Henry was one of the giants in this band. He never got what he should have gotten, you know. Benny Powell did. But Benny had a style, I think, that maybe appealed to the public just a little bit more. But and I have nothing against Benny, because Benny's my friend and he's a great trombone player. But as far as us touching Henry Coker, I don't think we could.
Well, tell us what made Henry Coker so great.
Well, I guess because he played the trombone so great. I don't know. He started out in Dallas, Texas, just like I did. But he did all his early playing in Dallas. And maybe that had a lot to do with the way he was approaching the horn and what he was playing on it. And he also had the benefit of having developed some very good chop muscles, where those lead parts were demanding, and he was able to do it. And Benny and I couldn't do that. We weren't able to live up to that, although we played some lead parts.
Right. Well, what would the lead? Because lead trumpet. People know the lead trumpet player and hitting those high notes. What's the requirements for a lead trombone player?
Actually, when a lead trombone player is playing high, I don't think it's like the same impact you get from a trumpet playing high,
Right.
So it kind of goes past the people, the
But
the solo's
kind
sounding
of similar
good.
function.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
it's part of your development of if you can reach high notes with quality,
Okay.
is a very desirable thing. There are a lot of people who pinch off high notes, and they get away with it, but it's not the real thing.
All right. Okay, let's go to another section.
Okay.
Let's go to the trumpet section. Now, I'm using the personnel from classic April in Paris
Okay.
recording. So on trumpet we had Joe Newman, Thad Jones, Wendell Cully, and Renaud Jones.
Renaud Jones.
Renaud, excuse me, Jones.
Very unrecognized lead trumpet player.
Okay.
He
He's
played,
the lead trumpet.
yeah,
Okay.
he was the lead man up there, and you never hear his name mentioned. But he was the one that was carrying this band along. Lead trumpet players really have a load, But he was the one that carried the band along for quite a few years before he left here.
Okay. All right. And what would you say about other three? Wendell Cully, Thad Jones, Joe Newman.
Wendell was a gentleman who played pretty. He played pretty solos when he played. He wasn't like a Flash or anything like that. Joe Newman was the swinger. Joe could swing you out of your shoes when he started playing his horn, He could do that. And then, of course, we had Thad Jones, who was just a master trumpet player. He was a master musician, as everybody found out later on after he left his band.
Okay.
How great he really was.
And had his own band.
Yeah, he had his own band, a very good band. It wasn't just I got a band, it's I got the band,
All right.
There were a lot of times that people didn't really understand what Thad was doing when he played his solos. But all the musicians knew that he was inside and outside the chord changes, and he was a different kind of musician. And I remember when he first joined, because I was already in the band when he joined, and we were playing Birdland, and I was walking around in the back of the club, and there was a guy on the phone. He said, there's a guy on the phone who wants to talk to somebody in the Count Basie Orchestra. And I said, okay, I'll take it. And I took the phone, and it was Thad. And he said, I just got off the train to down here at Pennsylvania Station. How do I get to Birdland?
Okay.
And I wound up telling him, get a taxi, man. And I said, well, it's not very far, So you get a taxi and tell them to take you to 52nd and Broadway, and it's right there.
Okay.
So I was actually the first guy who greeted Thad into this band. always reminded him of it.
I'm sure. Okay. And on alto saxophones, we have Marshall Royal
Marshall Royal,
and Billy Graham.
Billy Graham.
Yes.
Two opposites, if you ever. Yeah, Marshall Royal was one of the supreme lead alto saxophone players in the world, you know, without a doubt. And he knew it himself,
Oh, okay.
and it came through.
But he was here until the 90s or something, was it? Didn't he live?
No, he left here in
80?
like about 1967,
Oh, really?
68, somewhere in here.
I guess I'm thinking about another lead alto player that I thought I heard. Okay.
What's that?
Something dying, right? Dying?
No,
Right.
you're talking about leaving the band, right?
No, I'm talking about passing on.
Oh, passing. Oh, yeah. Whoa, it hasn't been that long since he passed.
Right, because I remember hearing him myself, I think back in the 80s, and his bearing, this way he carried himself, and then the way he played.
He was a very proud man. And the only thing I didn't appreciate about him is he didn't really respect Basie. You know, and I don't know whether I should let out this kind of information, but
Well,
too late.
and not only that, we're recording this for the archives, and we need truth. We
Yeah. There was one day I remember we were in Orlando, Florida. I don't know how Marshall and I got together. We were crossing this field to a restaurant or something, and he started talking about his days with Basie and how this was really and truly supposed to be his band or something like that. And he had some people out who were looking to back him. You know, he was going to form his own band. And he asked me if I would have any interest in something like that. And I just told him flat out, no. So that kind of stopped the conversation right there. But that made me feel a little bit uncomfortable with him after that, you know.
Do you think it was that he didn't respect him, or was it that he wanted to be out front?
He wanted. Well, he thought he was a greater musician than Basie. That's the impression I got.
But
You know that he was supposed.
He's
This was
also
supposed to
band
be.
leader.
Yeah,
There's a lot of different. I mean,
yeah, but this is like. I should be the leader of this thing, you know. And in a lot of respects, he was the leader because Basie did very little counting off of tunes.
okay.
That was Marshall's responsibility, you know, and he would be standing up telling you when to start and when to stop, you know.
Okay.
And Basie allowed Basie allowed all his lead alto saxophone players to do that, though. You know, yeah, that was their job.
Well, then, if you're talking about opposites, tell us about Billy Graham.
Can I tell her about Billy Graham?
Tell me.
Billy Graham was a fun lover
All right.
of the zillionth degree.
Okay.
You know,
He liked that.
he was always having a good time, man.
Okay. Okay.
He could play that saxophone, but he was always having a good time. And one of my most endearing moments with Billy, I think we were somewhere in Europe, and he and Thad went out and got drunk.
Okay.
You know, and they came back.
Toe up?
Yeah, toe up is the word for it. They came back to wherever we were playing. And Basie was asking about where they'd been. He said, "Oh, we've been out just having a good time, Basie." And all of a sudden, Bill had this chewed up cigar in his mouth. And he took it out and he said, "Have a little cigar, Chief." And stuck it.
The Basie?
Basie said, "You're fired." And he really fired him right there.
Oh, really?
He fired him.
Oh.
I mean, he gave him a 2-week notice.
Wow.
But they'd come back late for one thing.
Okay.
And then he stuck the cigar in Basie's mouth. And we were all standing there, you know, we're trying to be cool, but we're laughing inside too, you know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You mentioned Frank West before. was on tenor saxophone, and Frank
My
Foster.
father, Confessor Frank West.
All right.
Frank West is still with me. You know, like I started playing with Frank. I'd say, let's see. When did I join the band? 53.
53.
I think I started playing with Frank about 1950, somewhere in there.
Wow.
As it happens, Frank and his family lived like half a block from where I lived in Washington, D.C. with my family. And I used to always see him walking, you know, past with his horn. And we eventually got into conversation. And he was doing a lot even then, you know. And I told him I was playing trombone. He said, well, good. And that started our friendship. And I was also very good friends with his brother. Well, I was quite a bit younger than Frank, you know. So I formed a friendship with his brother, who died tragically. He was I think a scientific genius kind of guy, his brother. And he got caught on in the water with a boat that the outboard motor fell off the boat. And he dove to get try to recover the motor, and his thumb or something got stuck in, you know, and yeah. But I remember being friendly with all of Frank's family from a very long time ago.
What can you tell us about Frank Foster?
Well, I didn't meet Frank until I came into the Basie Band. And when I got into the Basie Band, all I heard was Frank Foster, Frank Foster, Frank Foster. Yeah. Because Frank was pretty near genius type, you know. Frank was already, I think Frank is like a year or so older than me. But he was already writing great. He was playing the saxophone like nobody else on the face of the earth was playing. You know, he would run into these towns and run the homeboys out, you know, playing the saxophone. So Basie put out some kind of hunt for him or something, you know. He said, well, we've been looking for you for a long time. And he sure enough came in here and changed the course for the Basie Band.
Not only his playing, but his writing.
His writing.
Okay.
His playing was great, but his writing has stuck on, you know, like glue to this band. It's a part of the history of the band. And
I mean, you probably don't go too many performances or any performance without playing like Shiny Stockings.
oh, you better play Shiny Stocking. That's, you know, that's one of the treasures of this band. If you don't play Shiny Stockings, you don't, you know, get any recognition. Somebody's gonna come up to you and say about something you didn't play by Frank Foster, and they can say, why didn't you play? I said, well, we can't play everything, you know.
Man.
But it's generally something by somebody like Frank Foster, you know.
Okay.
And
Let's talk about, I gotta ask you about, there's some other people. Joe Williams. Tell us about Joe Williams.
would you believe that Joe Williams and Sonny Payne joined the band on the same day, the day after Christmas 1954?
Really?
The same day. And the reason that Sonny came in, he wasn't actually coming to join. He was coming in to take Gus Johnson's place because Gus was sick.
Okay.
And we went out and we were going on to a southern tour. And I remember Sonny Payne going berserk on those drum solos, you know. And he was just wowing the crowds everywhere we went. And of course, Joe Williams, we did not have a piece of music for Joe.
Okay.
So everything we did at that particular time, including that every day, we did it like out of our heads, you know. And
That was so.
Ernie Wilkins, you know, took the stuff that we were playing out of our heads and made an arrangement out of it later on. But
So you mean to tell me that every day I have the blues start off as a head chart?
it's a hit.
And what about the words?
Well, he had the word, I think.
All right. So let's talk about the head charts, that aspect of the Basie legacy. A lot of these things were just, what do you say they were riffs?
Jumping at the Woodside.
Jumping into Woodside. Tell us about that.
Well, that was a head chart that started before we had the second generation.
Okay.
It was done by the original Basie band, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Jumping at the Woodside. Boy, I can hear the tunes and I can't.
You can go home. You can go home. Some of us will be able to, or some of them will be able to tell us what the titles are. Molten Swing.
Well, Moten actually was done in the Benny Moten band.
Well, wasn't
know.
that something that Eddie Durham wrote?
He may have
Or
written.
something like that.
He may have written down what they did out of the Benny Moten band. You know, I'm not saying that because he's a great writer, so he may have done that.
Eddie Durham.
But they were playing it, you know, before they put it on paper. Or just like every day though, because the stuff starts out as, you know, a hit, and then somebody eventually puts it down because everybody can't jam out those things like the Basie band did, you know.
Now speaking of that, let's talk about it. Basie band also has some great arrangers. I mean, Neil Hefti, Ernie Wilkins,
Yeah,
Buster Harding.
yeah.
Tell us about them some.
I wish I could have written like them. Yeah, those are some great writers, and I think they've all done things that made a mark on the Basie band, you know, and.
Like Neil Hefti's Little Darling. That's
Did you ever hear the story about Little Darling? That was my last record date before I left the band.
Please tell us.
He came in with Little Darling, and he had an idea where he wanted the tempo to be.
John Neil Hefti.
Neil Hefti. And we started off playing, and it was do 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 do. Do, 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 do. And Basie said, that's not how that tune is supposed to go. I said, what do you mean, Bass? He said, man, that's way too fast for that tune. And sure enough, he slowed it down. Do, 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 do. And the damn thing became a hit. I said, how can you hear like that?
I gotta just. I'm gonna get a little Staten Island in here for a second.
Okay.
Okay. I went to Tompkins High School in Staten Island, and that was a chart that we played in the stage band.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something about that song. I didn't know the history, but we played that song, and it just, I mean, it gave you such a feeling of to us high school kids in the late '70s of what jazz was really about.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You keep that feeling and swing, but at that slow tempo.
Yeah,
That
but that slow tempo was what got it, because with Basie it was dead slow. You know, and everybody else was, I think, afraid to play a tempo that slow. You know, I think so.
Okay.
But he felt it that way,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest is history.
Absolutely. Now, tell us about in the early '60s when you decided to leave the group.
Well, actually, I left in
Was it
57.
Oh, in '57.
Yeah.
Oh, but you came back in
I
the early
came back in 63.
Okay. Tell us about that.
Well, I left because my wife was expecting Gwendolyn.
Mm-hmm.
And
Gwendolyn.
yes,
Yes.
when Steve was born, I didn't see him until he was a month old. You know,
Tell us how many children.
Three.
Three children.
mm-hmm. I had 2 young men and Gwen. And I decided that I wasn't going to like be away like that, you know, like
Steve was your first?
Yeah.
Okay, you didn't
No, so David was. I don't know whether you met David.
Oh, David, I don't think so.
No, David's my oldest boy.
Okay.
He was born before I joined the basic band. And
So what did you do? What did you do? You left in '57.
I did a whole lot of I did a lot of things like working at the post office and where did I work somewhere? Where'd my wife disappear to? Did I work anywhere else while I was off?
For the most part, it was post office and gigging on the side.
I think you might
I was
have to come
gigging
back
on
over
the-
here, because we're gonna hand you the mic at some point. Oh,
Okay.
yes.
I'll be back when I'm finished.
Okay, all right.
So the post office
And gigging.
and gigging,
Yeah,
small group gigging.
small group.
Okay.
Occasional Howard Theater gig with Frank West or Rick Henderson.
Okay. Ray Henderson, tell us about
Rick
that.
Henderson.
Rick Henderson, who you mentioned before. Okay. And Rick Henderson played what?
Alto saxophone.
Alto saxophone. Okay.
Very good.
Okay. Oh, that's the coffee. I'm saying somebody snoring. I'm sorry. You know, this name keeps coming to mind because a good friend of mine has told me what a wonderful trombone player. Is it Benny Green?
Benny Green, he was a very good trombone player. And he had a way of commercializing his stuff so that he was, being heard on the side of recordings that were being bought by the general public. A lot of jazz people don't have that luxury. They have to have jazz fans buying them.
Right.
But then he caught the attention of the public, and he was working quite a bit. And Eric Dixon worked with him
Eric
before he joined this band.
Dixon.
Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Did you know Eric Dixon worked with Benny Green?
Yeah.
Did you? Okay.
All right. Now, could you introduce some of the folks here? You have some folks here that you want to?
Well, let's see. We got Bucky. We got Homie.
You gotta tell us who these folks are. You gotta tell us who they are.
You know what?
You don't even know.
Yeah, my memory for calling up names right quick like that is.
I'm on business. Norman.
This is Navarro Bell,
Cookie Bell.
Cookie Bell. This is Bucky, Eddie Harris,
Okay.
and I'm homie, Norman Nunn.
All right. Welcome.
All these guys came along with Eric Dixon and Sean Allen.
Okay.
They were all buddies, and very, very much supportive of Eric Dixon and his playing.
Okay.
And
Now,
love him.
okay. Let's talk about Eric Dixon some, because on this, there's a Basie tape on, a DVD,
Mm-hmm.
where Eric Dixon plays this wonderful solo. I don't recall the tune. Maybe Loren, you might know. But
That's a great CD, man.
yeah, that DVD is wonderful. But now Eric Dixon, tenor saxophone player with Basie. When did Eric Dixon join the band?
Let's see. I can.
Even approximately. 60s? I think this was in the 60s, so that he was playing then, so that's probably.
I'm trying to remember if he came in during the late 50s or
Oh,
late 50s, maybe 59, 58, somewhere in there.
okay.
You know.
Because he also played with Quincy Jones's big
Yeah,
band.
yeah, he did.
He took some great solos with Quincy Jones's band too.
Yeah.
So when he joined, was he on Staten Island at the time?
Yeah, he never left Staten Island.
Okay. When did you and your family go to Staten Island?
But we moved there in 1966,
Uh-huh.
and we haven't been anyplace else since then.
Okay. All right. Now Staten Island is not necessarily widely known, for its jazz.
We know.
However, I'm here to say that you have people like Jimmy Nepper, another
Jimmy
trombone.
passed,
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I know. Jimmy Nepper on trombone, who
Great trombone player.
yes. played with Charlie Parker, Charles Mingus, Chuck Wayne.
Yeah,
Great,
that's right.
great guitarist. My teacher, I gotta say, Caesar DeMoro.
I didn't know him.
You didn't know Caesar?
No.
Okay, played classical, oboe,
Mhm.
and alto, and played jazz, tenor, and alto, and some soprano, but mainly alto. Wonderful player in the Lester Young
Yeah,
style.
yeah.
And Eric Dixon, who owned a bar called the Meeting Place. Can I tell an anecdote, a personal anecdote?
Certainly.
I was a teenager, and I heard about, Eric Dixon, Basie Band, and he owned this bar
That's right.
on Castleton Avenue in Staten Island called the Meeting Place. So I actually went in there, I think it was on a Saturday morning, and I wanted to talk to this man. And I had a Walkman, and I had some Dexter Gordon and some other people on there, and I gave him a blindfold test. I call myself giving him a blindfold test. Well, tell me who this is, that's Dex, And we talked about the saxophone and Paul Gonsalves, who he loved. He said, a lot of people don't, there's intervals and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
But I had very little dealing with him, but what was your relationship like
With Eric?
with Eric Dixon?
We were like brothers, man. Is all I can say. And once we met, when I came back into the band, he was already there. And we hit it off almost right away. He was like 95% responsible for Doe and I moving to Staten Island. He and his wife.
Okay. Well, how'd that come about? You all in Washington?
We were in Washington. We decided we were going to move to New York. But we were thinking more like Long Island, And I think Eric or his wife came and said, Eileen, yeah, you keep prompting me. I get all these things. Anyhow, she said, you don't want to move to Long Island, you want to move to Staten Island. And we found us a place in Staten Island. On Bay Street, completely white neighborhood, except this one place with the cleaners that was run by a brother.
Okay.
And we had this great 3-bedroom apartment on top of the cleaners.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we really hated to leave when they put us out. He decided he wanted to live there.
Oh. Wow. Okay.
So we went from there to buying a house, the same house we're in now.
Okay. All right. And how has it been living on Staten Island? Do you ever play on Staten Island?
Only time I've played on Staten Island has been with the Basie Band.
Right.
This is my whole career has been
On the road.
with the Basie Band.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't think did Eric ever take any outside jobs after he? No, I guess we were just tied into this. Well, we were working a lot back then too,
Okay.
We were home very seldom and doing 51 nighters a month,
Right.
if you can do that.
Okay. 51. Goodness gracious. All right.
Yeah, and at that particular time, the work was hard because we played a lot of dances.
Okay.
And
Now, what period are you talking about?
this is in the 60s.
Okay.
Yeah. And we used to have to play 2.5 hour sets and take a half hour off and then come back and play an hour.
Wow.
So yeah. They don't do that anymore.
Thank goodness, right?
These guys complain about playing 50-minute sets now.
Oh.
And I see you guys just don't know.
Now, what about the business side of the big band business? It's not easy to hold together a big ensemble, but would you say that once Basie got his big band back together and the New Testament band did its thing and was so popular, that the Basie name and the tradition was able to really carry you all through the 60s and the 70s?
It got off to a fairly good start, but without Birdland, I don't know how long it would have lasted. And then we, after, you know,
Tell us what you mean.
well, I mean, we played Birdland, like, if we came in off the road, like a 2-week road trip, we'd play Birdland for 3 weeks,
Oh, okay.
you know? And the band was very popular in there, so anytime we were off, we were there.
Okay.
They used to, I remember there used to be a little ad in the Daily News that said, with a little strip of print, when we were back, it would say, Count Basie is home.
Oh, wow.
That's the way they would advertise it. Count Basie is home.
Okay. So that was it. Y'all were the house band. I mean,
Yeah, more or less.
it's hard for me to even say.
More or less.
Basic's the house band, you know? Okay.
And all the celebrities in the world would be in that place listening to Basie in the Basie band. I saw people I never dreamed I would see, you know,
Okay.
coming that way.
What about battles of the bands? What about those experiences? Battles of the big bands. Let me see. When did Ellington and Basie do that recording together?
Oh yeah, that was another one I wasn't on. That's when I was out of here too. It's called Battle Royal. Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you have any memories of some big band battles that you engaged in?
I remember us engaging in a few, but it wasn't like the old big band battles, I think, that took place, you know,
Back in the late 30s,
yeah,
early 40s.
those kinds of things.
Okay.
But I remember us doing battle with Stan Kenton.
Uh-huh.
Of course, we had to sit opposite the Duke Ellington band, not far from here, down at that Roseland Ballroom.
Okay.
And
What
there
can,
was,
what can you tell us about those? Like Stan Kenton and Duke Ellington. What?
oh, I can tell you, we blew them off the stand. That's,
I see. Excuse me. Stan Kenton. Would you say that about Duke too? Did you swing them?
I'm sorry, Duke, but
All right. Say it like you know.
Duke's, you know, it's greatest, but basically it was swinging.
Okay.
He was swinging, and you know, like the people would associate with their swinging, man, and you know, they'd get caught up in that.
Right. Right. I saw the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra one time. They had a battle between the Carnegie Hall Jazz Orchestra and the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra. And the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra played some kind of not well-known, obscure Ellington.
Mm-hmm.
And John Faddis and the Carnegie Hall Band,
Emo swinging.
who had Frank West on alto,
Swinging, man.
basic, straight up basic. And that was a rough night for the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra. It really was. Yeah.
Well, when there's been a little hesitant about putting Basie into his, you know, his collective way of doing his music. And he does a lot of Duke.
That's interesting. You're right. I've never really thought. What do you think that's about?
Well, I don't know whether it's just him not being able to adapt to the style, or maybe he just doesn't like it. You know, I don't know. But,
Doubt that, but I mean, I don't know.
well, I can't really speak to it,
Okay.
you know, because I don't really know why he doesn't.
Have that much in
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. When and how did you ended up taking over the band? I mean, you been there for.
I stayed there so long. They said we got to do something with this guy. So D Askew, where's D? Oh, here she is. D Askew, our manager.
I did ask you.
He is the one who, yeah, she was kind of in my half, yeah, when time came.
Now, what year was that? That was in 2004?
What was it, 2003.
2003, okay. All right.
And I was a little hesitant, of course, you know, like, and out in front of this band was not one of the things that clicked into my head when I joined it. I would ever be standing in front of it, you know. And I finally had enough encouragement from everybody around, you know.
Especially this morning.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess you did encourage me some, didn't you?
I got you the job.
Oh, wait, I gotta hand you the mic on. Say that again, just lay it with you.
You got me the job too.
Yes. Actually, I had spoken to Dee, and she said that she was looking for a leader for the band. And she had approached a few people, and they weren't available. So I said to her, well, what about Bill? She's like, well, do you think he would take the job? Yes, he'll take it. He'll have the job. And the rest, Dee can tell you.
Well, actually, I had been thinking about Bill all along and been talking to Aaron Woodward, who was the CEO of Count Basie Enterprises and my boss. But I was actually thinking about someone who had a history with the band and a long history with the band, and who people, not necessarily a soloist, but someone that people would recognize as being a part of the legacy of the Basie band. And so I actually thought of Bill, but actually Aaron didn't think it was such a great idea. And but the more I talked to Doe, and the more I put into Aaron's ear that Bill was the right person for this, then it just became, I just went ahead and did it without my boss even agreeing to it. I just went ahead and said, okay, Bill, you're the leader. That's it.
I'm going to hand the mic over to Mr. Loren Schoenberg, Executive Director, who's sitting next to Ms. Melba
Joyce, our first Harlem Speaks honoree, and who is now performing and singing with the Count Basie Orchestra.
Thanks to Mrs. Hughes.
Bill, I just have a few questions for you I'd just like to ask.
Good.
I'm over here. A few questions. First of all, I'd like to start with Count Basie, the piano player.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, by the 1950s, sometimes if you hear the recordings of the band or watch the films of the band, it seems on the surface as though he had settled into like a comfortable style of playing things here and there. But I know from guys in the band that he always retained the ability to really get in there and play
he could get
when he
up
wanted to. So
yeah.
what I'd like to do is, I'm wondering if you could, and again, as Greg mentioned when we began this thing, you know, we are recording these interviews and they are going into the archives for the future, for people who never saw Count Basie or heard the band. What do you think the world needs to know about Count Basie, the pianist?
Well, first of all, I should say that Basie and his outlook on the world was simplicity. You know, everything he thought of, like, had some simple explanation behind why he was doing it. And I think that carried through very well into his music. And he had the capacity to play some really flashy things, you know, like basically really, what they call a stride piano. Man, he could get that stride piano going and to knock you off your feet, you know. But he decided that he wanted to be known for his relaxed style of playing his piano, you know. And every now and then he would show off, but for the most part, he wanted to carry his band in a way that the swing and the tempo were the things to be noticed rather than the firepower, you know.
How did he lead you mentioned the Marshal Royal counted off the tempos
Yes.
a lot of the time. What kind of power or influence or relaxed influence did Basie exert from the piano to the way that the band played it? He was happy or unhappy with something that was going on, and how did he?
If he was unhappy with the tempo of what was happening, otherwise, he would let you know it in ways that he would play, and in the ways he would look at you. You know, he had a way of looking at you, and one of his strongest point is if you were doing something that he really didn't like, he'd say. You know? And you knew you wanted to get off that already. So his approach to the music was completely devoted to being simple. He thought, like, if I play simply, more people will come, you know, and I think that it really carried him a long ways.
You know, for the folks in the audience who've never been in a band and never been on the road and never been with a bunch of people traveling the same bus and the same people day in, day out, I don't know how much they realize how much like a family it becomes, and
Yeah.
with all the good and all the bad things that happen, you know, just all the stresses and all the things that these people living together.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, I guess all successful band leaders, yourself included, at some point have to become, well, like a master psychologist or a leader of men.
True.
To somehow deal with these things.
And I always said Bass was a master psychologist.
Well, could you please explain that? What do you mean, and how did he do it, and what did he do?
Well, he made everybody in this band feel like he was special, that he was wanted, you know, and psychologically that does a lot as far as you conforming to what the band is about. You know, if you think the leader's on your side, man, you know, that's almost 100% of the job. And Basie had a way of getting that over very, very well. And his name was Simplicity, you know. If he wanted it to be simple, that's exactly what he got, because the band became known. It became known for the simplicity of it.
How did he deal with problems?
Sometimes very fired up, you know. I remember one time we were going through a very bad spot in this band, and we were having trouble getting musicians who were qualified to do the job, and we were sounding pretty shabby to me. And I had the nerve to go up and tell Basie, well, you know, we can't keep doing this, man. Why don't you break this thing up, man? He looked at me like I was crazy. He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You know, we're not playing well." He said, "Do you realize I have 16 families depending on this job?" That made me shut up right there, you know, because he was right. You know, he said, this band is going to eventually become again what I want it to be, you know, and you don't have to worry about that. That's not your job. So I was quiet after that.
I have another question. The 1950s Birdland tours that you folks did.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard stories about the midgets.
Oh, the midgets and the giants.
Can you tell us about that, please?
Well, we had quite a few short people in the band, you know.
Physically challenged.
Physically challenged. I'm basically being one, and Sonny Payne, and let's see, who else was in there? Well, Joe Newman wasn't that big. What's the little trumpet player we were talking about on the end?
Wendell Culley.
Wendell Culley. Yeah, he was small. And we had some giants. We had Charlie Folks, we had Henry Coker, now it's pretty big. And Lockjaw was more meaty. You know.
And Eddie Jones was pretty big.
Eddie Jones was pretty big. And we started having these water pistol battles. And we were out on these tours. They call it Birdland tours. And between every set, we would have these water pistol fights, man. Guys would be shooting water pistols from behind, you know. We're just going crazy, having fun, really. And I remember one night, somebody slipped and fell. I think it was Eddie Jones. He slipped and fell and broke something. I don't even remember what he broke now, but that kind of stopped. That kind of stopped the fun, you know. But those things were going on all over the road. The midgets and the giants.
On that tour was Bud Powell and Lester Young.
Oh man,
All those
all
people.
my heroes, all these people were. You know what, man? You just reminded me of a one-time scene when Charlie Parker came out to play with that blue, and I remember we got on an airplane going to Boston to play, and Charlie got on, and I noticed he didn't have his horn with him, you know. So we got up there, and he said, "Man, well, I don't have a horn. I have to borrow a horn from somebody." I said, "What?" He said, "I have to borrow a horn." And I think he asked Ernie Wilkins if he could borrow his horn. And Charlie took his horn and started playing. He started out very well. But somewhere along the line, man, that reed didn't work for Charlie. And he started squeaking every other note. You know, and that made an impression on me. I said, "Oh, he's human." But those little tidbits that you remember about guys. One of the most impressive guys I met out there though was Lester Young. You know,
We've heard about how great his playing was, but we've heard a lot about his sense of humor and what he was like.
Great sense of humor and.
Could you tell us about it, like some things he said or things he did?
Well, I don't remember all the things that Lester told me, but I remember some were very funny. And he always sat in the very back of the bus. You know, he would never sit up front. And he always had a sandwich and a bottle in his case. And he'd sit back there and he'd ride the bus and wouldn't say anything to anybody. Everybody was lady this and lady that when he spoke, you know. Called everybody lady. But I was really impressed with him because I knew that deep inside of this man who was like coming on in this very human fashion was this giant of a man inside his brain, you know. And that impressed me thoroughly about him.
Nothing I'm curious about with the Basie Band. I mean, that band that you were in was known for its tremendous precision. It was the time you were in the band that the band became known as the Swing Machine.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, as opposed to the Basie Band of the 30s, which was more like spontaneous.
Yeah, that's right.
In a certain kind of way. But I'm curious, like in the trombone section, for starters, who set the phrasing, like with the trumpets and the trombone, all those famous records that you made? And did the different guys in the sections get a chance to like?
I think everybody got a chance to do that because you weren't relegated to one part. I mean, you didn't play first all the time, you didn't play second all the time, you didn't play third all the time. So everybody got a chance to, you know, shoot their best shot on playing lead parts, whatever else came up.
You mentioned how important the lead trumpet was before, and you talked about Reynold Jones.
Yeah.
I think you were in the band about later when Paulie Cohen came in.
That's right.
Right. Who were some of the outstanding lead trumpet players through? I mean, you spent so many. So you were in the band with Snooki, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Could you talk about some of the great lead trumpet players and what made them unique?
I'm going to lead off with Snooki because he was, in my mind, the greatest lead player that I played with when I came in here. You know?
What, to someone who doesn't play an instrument, has never played in a band, that doesn't know anything, doesn't know a B flat from an A flat, what does it mean when you say a great lead trumpet player? How would you explain to someone who has no concept?
Well, if you're going to be a great lead player, first thing you have to have a style of playing, and a style that everybody can grab onto and follow you correctly. And the next thing you got to have is a pair of chops that's going to take you to all those places where you have to go. You know, when you're going high on the trumpet player, you can tell. I mean, you don't have to be a musician to know when somebody's pinching off a note and it's not coming out full. And the guys with the talent to do that, and Snooki was very adept at doing that. Snooki wasn't the leading high note player of his time, but what he did with what he had was so impressive that he was, you know, like heads and shoulders above guys who were playing higher. So he has my vote as A number 1 in lead section plan.
You were in the band, I guess he passed before you came in, but not that long after Al Killian. And,
Yeah.
and I know the guys used to talk about him a lot. Were you in the band during the European tour when Joe Wilder was in the band?
Yeah,
And he met his wife?
yeah,
Well, you know, Joe was one of our first Harlem Speaks guests, and so
Yeah.
we have the interview with him, but could you tell just about Joe in the band? And
well, he wasn't here very long, but Joe, he plays so pretty, man. You know, that you become like, and aside from the playing, the personality of the man gets to you. And with the combination of his playing and the personality, and he's always still the same right up until today, you know. And I remember he did this one record with us where he did a solo on a thing called Softly with Feeling. And it was one of the most beautiful trumpet solos I'd heard on the record, you know. And I believe Joe could pick it up now. What's he, 85 today?
Today is his birthday.
85, right?
Right.
5 years.
He could do it right now, man.
Bill, I have a question. What was it like as somebody who, growing up in America, you mentioned you were born in Texas, and then playing with the Basie Band, going to Europe for the first time?
I was thrilled.
How did it feel, and what was it like, especially as an African American, going to Europe with a band like the Basie Band, when I guess in the States you were subjected to one reality,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you're in Scandinavia, or right? I believe in Scandinavia.
Scandinavia, where we were welcomed as real heroes. They had a band and a crowd of about 300 people on the tarmac when we got there, and we didn't know. We said, "What's that band doing out there on the field?" And they were waiting for us. I mean, there's a whole big crowd of people, you know, and I was thoroughly impressed. And there I was, young trombone player sitting up there. Hey, this is all right.
Who were some of your favorite guest stars? Because we all know that during the period that you were with the band, I mean, Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. and Judy Garland, just for starters, and Sarah
Let me look at my
Vaughan.
list here, because this list is so long, man.
I'm just curious, you know, what are some of the highlights? For instance, when Frank Sinatra was around the band.
Frank was a nice guy. He was particularly crazy about Basie, you know, and Basie never did subscribe to all the stuff that those guys were doing, but he was just friendly enough that, you know, that they loved him for what he was doing. But let's see, Billie Holiday, very excellent feeling about playing with her, you know. That's one of the highlights of my life, playing with Billie. And I got Ella Fitzgerald on here, who's, you know, our sis. She was what we call sis. We'd go to her house and eat and have a good time and come on the bandstand. She blew everybody away.
I'm going to just stop you there for a second, and just wondering if you can talk about Ella for a moment, because I think a lot of, again, folks not in the business don't realize that musicians look at someone like Ella Fitzgerald like a fellow musician. You know what I mean? And they respect her tremendously the same way that they respect a trumpet player or a trombone player, or Pablo Casals or Art Tatum or something like that. And just wondering if you could just talk for a moment about how you felt as a guy playing trombone, face to face with her and her musicianship. What did she represent?
Well, in the first place, I just felt very privileged to have had the opportunity to play behind her so much. You know, we used to be on tours with her for seemingly a month at a time, you know, and we all got to know each other very well, and she was just a great person to be around, always positive, you know, always positive, never said a bad word about anybody that I know of. And when you got on the bandstand and you were playing behind her, and you could feel that she was, I mean, we were playing behind her, but she was carrying everything along, you know, with her voice. And then we leave the bandstand and go to her house and get some good food.
How would you compare working with Ella Fitzgerald with working with Sarah Vaughan?
My wife doesn't like for me to talk about Sarah Vaughan. My wife thinks that I was in love with Sarah Vaughan. She says she thinks she's in love with me. We were really just good buddies, you know. Sarah and I we liked each other's company, so we hung out.
Right.
But it was nothing really dear.
Thanks for coming, everybody. This is your life.
Remember me?
Just joking. Anyway, one last question, and then I'll turn it right over to.
I don't think you answered musically in terms of Sarah and Ella. I want to hear it. I really want to hear that.
What's that about?
About the musical comparison.
Between Sarah and there was such completely different styles of delivering, you know, that I never even thought of them as being like competitors in any way. Because but I'm saying they was equally so great in what they were doing, you know, that it just never occurred to me to say, wait, one is, yeah.
How about Sammy Davis?
Sammy Davis could do anything he felt like doing, man. I think he could have grabbed my trombone and played it better than I played it, you know. He was just a multi-talented guy who, he could do anything, man. And it was always a joy for us to play behind him, except for with Sammy, he didn't like to come off stage. You know.
Oh, really?
No, he enjoyed everything he was doing. And he hated to get off the stage. So we'd be saying, please, Sammy, I want to go home, man.
That sounds like Lionel Hampton.
Oh, yeah, same thing, you know.
Could you talk a little bit about Catherine Basie?
I don't want to talk about... Oh, well, wait a minute. Let me take that back. No, Catherine was a nice lady. She was a nice lady. And she didn't really start to come out with the Basie band until Basie got a little, under the weather. So actually, we didn't have that much contact with her. Yeah. But she was a nice lady.
One last thing I'd just like to ask you about, and Greg alluded to this earlier, but about Freddie Green. Because in a way, Freddie Green was like the last of the Mohicans. He was the last working rhythm guitar player in the world, and like on Mount Everest, with Count Basie playing this thing. And I remember all those concerts where they used to play that blues in duet, and he played that little thing. Just tell us about Freddie Green and his role in the band. What did he represent to the younger guys in the band?
When they called Freddie Green Mr. Rhythm, that's exactly what he was. And I don't care who else thought they were setting the tempo in this band, including Count Basie. It was Freddie Green. He was right there all the time where that tempo should be. He would not let it wander. If it wandered off, he'd look at you and give you the cold stare. Give you that cold stare and let you know that you're going wrong. But they had a nice relationship, actually, he and Basie. And I had a nice, long relationship with Freddie, too. Freddie tried to convince me. He was a good golfer, He tried to convince me to play golf. And he gave me a set of clubs. And I said, okay, Freddie, I'll take these clubs and I'll go out, every now and then and hit the ball. I put the clubs in my basement, right? We had a fire in the basement.
Oh, no.
And the clubs are still there. But the gloves, they're looking like that. I never had the heart to throw them out. They're still there, just like that, And I never told Freddie that I never got a chance to hit a ball with those gloves. I knew he would be furious if I told him that.
You mentioned about the tempo movement. I heard a story, I don't know whether it's true or not, but the story I heard was that the band loved the way that Gus Johnson played, because Gus played for the band. And then Sonny Payne came in, and he was wonderful too. He was Chris Columbo's son, and a wonderful showman, and he really helped the band, I guess, along with Joe Williams, become famous again in a certain way. But I also heard that Freddie Green had a stick on the bandstand, and that Sonny Payne would rush, you know what I mean? He'd kind of get carried away and show off a little bit and kind of move the tempo. They used to stick him with a stick. Now you're laughing, is that true?
That's true. Freddie would not tolerate anybody going, you know, off tempo. That just wasn't in his purview, no. You're gonna play this tempo, man. Stay there. I don't care what you want to show off, you know. You're gonna play this tempo. And Gus was a great. I really enjoyed playing that first year with Gus on drums, you know. And we went out on the road. Sonny Payne and Joe Williams joined the band this very same day. The day after Christmas in 1954, I think it was. And we went south on the tour, and both those guys were tearing it up, you know. And I remember we came back through the Howard Theater, and we played with those guys up there, and Sonny Payne tore those drums up and threw sticks all over the place, boy. And people were standing up screaming, you know, and hollering. And Basie said, I think I'm going to keep him. And I knew Gus was doomed then, you know.
I've heard that Buddy Rich and Count Basie also were very close.
Like a son to Basie. In fact, Basie was very giving when Buddy needed money to form his second or third band. And Basie contributed quite a bit. They had a relationship that nobody else had with Buddy. You know, Buddy was pretty tough to get along with. But he would never, ever say a bad word about Chief. That was his man. They almost like father-son.
Bill, I'm wondering, many of us who watched Basie in those later years, in the early 80s, and when he was riding around on the scooter and all that kind of stuff, were so impressed with what just seemed to be like his bravery as his body deteriorated and as he stayed on the road.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's a very bittersweet memory for you. But I'm wondering, to what extent could you tell us about the later years with Basie, about his illness, about his wanting to stay on the road, and maybe just some memories about it, because it's part of the history and something that people need to know about him.
Well, we knew that it was getting to be more and more difficult with the Chief, you know, and we tried to alleviate that as much as we could, you know, because we knew there were difficult bandstands to get on to, and Grover Mitchell was very helpful to him during a lot of that period. And just to sit back and see the courage of this guy, to keep coming back and coming back and coming back on these one-nighters, you know, that made us all work a little harder, you know, because we were appreciating his efforts so much. But he was a real champion during his last days, during those difficult things of getting on the stage, getting off the stage, getting on the bus. Getting on the bus was worse than getting on the stage, actually, you know, because you had some terrible steps to go up to get on the bus. But like he said, he was a champion, you know, but he wasn't giving in to it. And I remember the very last job we did was in L.A., and Ella Fitzgerald was on the show with us. And I remember that crowd out there being very disrespectful to those people that night, you know. And when Basie got off the stage, he said, I don't think I'm coming back. And Loren and I was standing there looking at him, and we both kind of went into tears, you know, because we knew that was exactly what was going to happen. And he never came back after that.
Thank you for sharing that. One last question, and then I will surrender the mic back to Greg, and our audience, I'm sure, has a lot of questions. Basie once said to Artie Shaw that, he said, when Lester Young was in the band and when Thad Jones were in the band, he said they were the only two soloists in the band history who, when they played, kind of took the music.
Their way.
You could feel
Yeah.
the band go away.
That's
you could
very
feel the
possible.
change. Could you explain that about, because you played with both of them?
Yeah.
Could you try and make us feel that or understand what he meant by that?
Well, I think those two guys, the way they played those instruments was like unlike anybody else. I mean, most times if you listen to a soloist, you'll hear a little bit of somebody in there, a little bit somebody else here. And those two particular guys was always Thad Jones and Prez, you know. When Prez played his first note, you knew it was Prez. Because the vice Prez could, you know, emulate it to a degree. But somewhere down the line, he'd give himself away and you knew it wasn't Prez, you know.
Will you tell him Paul?
Paul Quinochet. Mm-hmm. That's right, I might, you know, my memory for names is
But when he said that the feeling that you could feel a change, what do you think what did it feel like playing?
When those guys were playing?
Yeah.
Well, it took the music to another level almost every time they played, you know, that's the one thing. And they had a way of developing, it's a funny thing, they had another way of developing the chords into something that was very musical. You know, a lot of people can play chords, you know, chord changes, but making music out of it is not in everybody's purview.
When you say
I wish I could just take what he just said,
yeah, right.
and if I had like what they used to have, like, you know, have the 10 Commandments like this, and put that on a card for all the young musicians who play off the chord.
Yeah.
Don't take that second step that you're talking about.
Yeah, right. That's, I mean, you know, that's important that they, you know, if they're gonna be great soloists, they have to have that. You know.
We're getting some real wisdom here tonight. Greg, can I give this back to you? Maybe we can.
Thank you, Loren.
How you doing,
Well, let me see. Let me yes, you may. Miss Jackie Taja Murdoch, one of our Harlem Speaks honorees. Give her a hand, please.
As a child, born in 1930 like you,
Mhm.
I used to listen to the radio because that's all we had was a big radio and the big band sounds. And I used to listen to Count Basie. And I used to rock in a chair.
Mhm.
And I used to dream about dancing. And in 1947, I was honored to work at the Apollo with the Count Basie band.
Okay.
I don't know who the drummer was, but I sort of had a crush on him. I was 17 years old at that time. I don't remember his name, but there was a drummer there. And they were,
Joe Jones? Shadow Wilson?
Shadow Wilson.
they
that's what
were
I'm saying.
swinging,
Shadow.
swinging at
He was a
that
swinging
time too.
drummer.
To stand behind that curtain and feel the vibration of the music coming up, it was just it was awesome.
Mhm.
Nobody ever talks about his daughter, but his wife used to bring his daughter backstage. She used to be in a wheelchair. She was about, I guess, 5.
He's still surviving, you know.
So I heard when I was honored at Columbia University, when all the people that had worked with Count Basie
Mhm.
was honored there, and I happened to ask that question, and they said she lives in California. Is that true?
Florida. Mhm.
Is she married?
No, she was never able to reach that point.
But I always, you know, because I remembered that all the time
Yeah.
backstage. They brought this child, a very beautiful little girl, and his wife.
They didn't expect her to live past.
She was very
like
quiet,
21
his
or so.
wife.
Yeah.
But I was just honored to know that a little girl with a dream that I worked with Count Basie.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Singers who been in the band, particularly up there's a singer now who's performing with you that I'd like you to talk about. Miss Melba Joyce.
Miss Melba Joyce.
Yes.
Miss Melba Joyce is a very impressive lady. You know, she knows her business about this singing, and she knows how to get a rise out of you if she wants to when she's out there, you know, fronting this band. I can't say enough about her. She has all the musical ability in the world. I never tell her this because I don't want her to get the big head, but she does a great job.
Okay. Now what about her daughter? Her daughter was fronting the band before
That's
she
true.
was.
That's true. We had the daughter, and then we got the mama. It generally works in the opposite direction, and it's been a joy having both of them.
All right. Well, we're gonna bring things to a close. I would like to just ask you this one last basic question. You're now leading the band.
Yes, sir.
Can you sum up what you learned from Basie after all those years, and how you're bringing that to the way that you're running the organization?
Yeah. And Basie always summed up his music with one simple statement. And he says, if I look out there when we're playing and everybody's patting their feet, then I'm doing my job. You know, and I never forgot that. You know, he's always had a simple approach to it. And there's no point in taking it past where he, you know, was taking it as far as, you know, what he wanted the band to play. So that's what I think about all the time when I'm up there, actually, about the chief.
All right. Melba Joyce wants to make that.
Well, I'm very happy to be here tonight, and I just want to thank Mrs. Hughes for recommending me, having Bill remember me when he called and said, Melba, did you mean what you said when you said you want to sing with this band one of these days? And I said, yeah. He says, well, we want you to come and sing with us. And I said, okay. But he's the best boss I've ever had. I mean, I haven't had a lot of bosses because I had my own thing, you know, but just the best boss I've ever had, calm all the time. And just very unruffled and very, I don't know, he's just so with it and seems to understand. I guess because he's been out here 52 years, but he understands everything. I've never seen nobody got an answer, just, you know, it's like, well, you know, it happens sometimes. I'm like, but Bill, it's like, well, you know, and he'll go, well, it'll be fine. Sit there and counts the music off, just rock, like a rock, you know, like a rock, just holding it all together, nurturing everybody in his own way. Everybody's an individual. Anybody has a problem, you know, they talk to Bill about it, and he we just know it's gonna be all right. Bill's gonna take care of it, whatever's going on, and that's what he does. And all the things that he said about Basie is what he is, and more to me. I knew Mr. Basie a little bit, but he's
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes.
Hope to see everybody on the next gig now.
All right. Okay. Oh yes, we're gonna take some pictures. Thank you all for coming.
Folks, just before we split, two things. First of all, 2 weeks from when our next Harlem Speaks, if you have your cards, just remember, don't come here. It's at the Museum of the City of New York. And I'd like to thank Mr. Greg Thomas for
Loren. Want me to roll this?
Yeah.
Okay. 1 second.
That's okay. Oh, yes, yeah.
Give me 1 second.
Greg,